Crucial scenes were filmed in Wales. What a beautiful part of the world.
It was magnificent.
But challenging for you on Freshwater Beach, wasn't it?
Freshwater West has a shallow run, so the tide comes in very, very fast. We have 800 casts, 1,500 cast and crew, 130 horses, 80-something trucks, 40 ATVs, and we got to march up the beach every 20 minutes, another 50 yards. So, it had its challenges. And, the first couple of days we were there, it was stinky, The water was chopping up. We've got, these 14 barges, and we've got people falling out, barges swinging into shot. They were unable to control them because, between 2 and 4 foot sort of, dribbly little waves, really not sort of surfing style waves, but, certainly enough to muck around with a flat bottom barge, But then, miraculously and magically, the sun came out and it was like sunny for about a week.
You didn't film this in Nottingham, did you? Where did you film it?
Mainly in Bournewood and Freshwater West, as we discussed, and various places we dotted around all over the place.
You lived in Surrey, didn't you? And you were near to Shepperton Studios,
Yep.
and there were tremendous locations in Surrey, in the Meridian regions.
The studio tried to convince Ridley that he should shoot this in Eastern Europe. It was a very interesting conversation to hear. And he said, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, "Mate, I don't want to be the bloke who has to sit and have conversations with the press saying, yeah, this is the Eastern European version of Robin Hood. Making Robin Hood, we have to make it in England." You deserve that, the story deserves that, and, the English film industry deserves that.
And it's a real epic, like Gladiator. And Sherwood Forest is Windsor Great Park, and you're in Virginia Water as well. We live in a beautiful
Sherwood
country
Forest
here.
is made up of a few different places. But possibly because he's a knight of the realm or whatever, we got permission from the Queen to shoot in places that they hadn't actually allowed the public into before. So these twisted oak forests and stuff, that you could just tell people hadn't walked through and stuff for a long, long time. It was funny, actually. Prince Andrew visited the set one night. This time I met him in his own backyard, literally, right? And we were chatting away, and he said, I was having dinner with my mother the other night. I was like, yeah, right, your mother. It was just funny to hear the Queen referred to, in that way. I was having dinner with my mother the other night. I said, "Mum, do you think I should wear a suit when I go down to the set?" And she said, "Oh, Andrew, everybody will think you're a ninny." I just thought to myself, this guy's kind of cool. That was such a nice story to say, because he knows the effect it's going to have, Mum calling a prince a ninny, So we started talking, and he asked me questions, very smart and insightful questions about what we might do and the time periods and stuff. And I started telling him where we were going, and he really appreciated it. I didn't realise he was such a student of the history of England over the ages, So, and a couple of decisions that we'd made, he sort of then jumped to the next point of where we'd go to. And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly where we're going." So we actually had a great chat, and I started to just appreciate him as a man, And
were your kids there on set in Surrey as well?
Not for that night, but we were doing this stunt. That's the sort of attack at the fireside, right? So at a certain point, the crew's gathered round, and we're going over the next bit. I've got a stunt guy on the ground. I've got a burning log in my hand, and I'm showing everybody how I'm going to be beating this guy's head into the ground, and I'm talking about it as I go, And, he's just standing there, interested observer, And so I've got this guy on the ground. I said, and then I'm going to, have the burning log. I'll push him over like this, and then I'll be smacking him in the head, and then I'm going to stand up, and then, Andy, and I threw the log, right? And Andrew's sitting there, and he catches it. And I said, and then he's going to hit you. And the crew just went, "Oh, he just threw a burning log at Prince Andrew." But in Andrew's eyes, it was like, thanks for treating me like a man. Thanks for just being having a simple attitude. And, it was cool.
And you have new respect.
Well, yeah, he wrote me a couple of pages later the next day, and it was sort of unfortunate we haven't had time to hook up again, but we will.
One of the things when you watch the movie is the attention to detail, the historical accuracy of the costumes, the detail in the costumes, the props, which is very symptomatic of what Ridley's about.
Yeah, well, the thing about working on a movie of this budget, people like Arthur Max, the production designer, and Janty Yates, the costume designer, they get to really express themselves and get to take advantage of the reading that they've done and the things that they've discovered. And the attention to detail is something that Ridley demands as a filmmaker, you know. For example, the sword that I get off a dead man or a dying man in an ambush, you know, the mother of pearl and opal in the handles. And I said to the sword maker, I said, opal is like this, you know, it's a modern stone, it's not ancient. And he just said, little do you know. And then, you know, the next day comes out with a couple of volumes of books of how popular opal was in the Middle East, you know. And we're saying that this is a sword that survived a generation in terms of, you know, being on one crusade and going back on another. So it was so accurate, it was kind of embarrassing to have to say, you know, you're right, you know, I'm wrong.
And when you think about the myth of Robin Hood, it's so bound up with Nottinghamshire, isn't it? You know, but yours is a completely fresh take, isn't it, on this? It's the beginning of the myth.
It's an origin story. And, you know, if you do the research on Robin Hood, you realise that there is, you know, a crossroads with many historians. And is Robin Hood really about Nottingham, or does he actually come from somewhere else? And a number of historians actually say he comes from Barnsdale, you know. And in our movie, that's the way that we take it, you know. So there is a direct association with Nottingham, and from the point on that we finish the movie, and from then on, it's going to be all about Nottingham and Sherwood Forest for the rest of his life, basically.
I was going to say that because Yorkshire like to claim Robin Hood, but it is very much Nottingham in your eyes.
If you look back in the history, you'll find that he has deep associations in Scotland as well. So I think it's one of those stories where the central tenets of the story are so compelling that once people buy into it, they want it to be, you know, theirs. What I did with the Merry Men is wherever the opportunity arose, wherever we visited, without announcement, or, you know, whether in Wales or whether in Derbyshire or whatever, without announcement, we would just go and sit quietly in the corner of a pub somewhere until we felt the temperature of the room was right, and then put on a bit of a show, you know. One of the tenets of the selection of the casting of the Merry Men is they all had to have a musical background. And Ridley said to me, why, you know? I said, mate, if you survive battlefields like this, you know, you're going to learn to celebrate when you have the opportunity. And nobody's ever answered the question in a Robin Hood, why are the merry men merry? Well, they're merry because they get on the piss and sing songs, you know, and which is, you know, one of the great traditions of this country.
Do they help with the old bow and arrow?
My kids? Yeah, I used to tie targets to their bums and make them run around the garden. One of them has a limp now and one of them's lost an eye, but apart from that, it was really helpful for me, moving targets.